Good evening, everyone. I am Dean Taifa, Assistant Dean of Students for Diversity and Leadership Development at Wofford College. I also serve as a member of the Wofford College's 2021 virtual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Committee. As a committee, the Wofford College Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Committee has a social responsibility to acknowledge the historical context in which Wofford currently exists. As a result, we acknowledge that we gather as an institution of higher learning on the ancestral lands of Indigenous peoples past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself, and thank enrolled members of the Cherokee Nation and their tribes for their involvement in helping the college learn more about the people who are stewards of the land Wofford currently occupies. We also acknowledge the enslaved Africans who labored to lay the physical foundations of the college. As a result, this committee commits to actively engage in learning about the history of the land we occupy, how to be better stewards of it, and continue to honor with intention and respect the historical and current significance of Indigenous and enslaved peoples who suffered in the creation of the college and who are credited for its current existence. I want to thank you all today for joining this session, Bonner Scholars Keeping the Same Energy, in celebration of Wofford College's 2021 virtual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Week celebration. This year, the college's celebration theme is Keeping the Same Energy. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. And in reflecting on the racial injustices and losses that we've all experienced as individuals and as a collective community during 2020, it's paramount to highlight all that we have learned in the past year and commit to ensuring we keep the same energy by continuing to use those lessons to contribute to a more equitable community. So in beginning this year's celebration and in alignment with the life and legacy of Dr. King, tonight in a discussion led by Toria Teamer, Bonner Scholars Hector Ortiz, Tyrus Peoples, Brianna Dugan, Savannah Bryant, and Sammy Omar will highlight the importance of being in service to the communities we belong to. Additionally, as attendees in this session, you all will learn how to register for the City of Spartanburg's MLK Day of Service initiatives through your Campus Connect accounts on My Wofford. It is my hope and the hope of the members of the college's planning committee that after attending tonight's session, each of you in attendance will be able to answer what Dr. King referred to as life's most pertinent, persistent, and urgent question. What are you doing for others? In framing our discussion tonight, our moderator, Toria Teamer, will introduce herself and ask each Bonner Scholar to introduce themselves. Then each Bonner Scholar will answer a series of carefully curated questions regarding the importance of community service and engagements and its connection to Dr. King. Once all questions have been exhausted, we'll transition to the Q&A portion of the program. As attendees, you all can privately submit your questions to myself to be considered during the Q&A portion of the program. We will make every effort to answer as many questions as possible. However, we may not be able to get to every question. And as a final logistical note, in order to have a productive conversation, any attendee who is engaging in disrespectful, harassing, or racist behavior will be removed from today's session and future sessions going forward. So at this point, I now yield to tonight's moderator, Toria Teamer, Bonner Scholars Program Manager at Wofford College, to introduce herself and allow our esteemed panelists to introduce themselves.
Can you guys hear me? All right. Thank you, Dean Taifa. As mentioned, I am Toria Teamer, and I serve as the Bonner Scholars Program Manager. I was introduced to the Bonner program through my own service experience as an AmeriCorps Vista, and through that position, learned more about my hometown of Spartanburg, but also the value of community service. At this point, I will now ask the Bonner Scholars to introduce themselves by stating their name, year, hometown, major, and one word that comes to mind when they think of community service. Hector, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Toria. So my name is Hector Ortiz. I am a current junior. I'm from Saluda, South Carolina. I'm majoring in biology, philosophy, and Spanish. And one word that comes to my mind when I think about community service is justice.
I'm Tyrus Peoples. I am a senior from Red Bank, South Carolina, majoring in government and minoring in philosophy. Excuse me. And my one word would have to be leadership when I think of community service.
My name is Brianna Dogan. I am a junior. I'm from Spartanburg, South Carolina. My major is biology and neuroscience, and my one word is compassion.
Hi, my name is Savannah Bryant. I'm a current junior. I'm from Clover, South Carolina, and my majors are math and computer science with a minor in philosophy. And one word that comes to mind when I think of community service would be connection.
Hey guys, my name is Sammy Omar, class of 2023. I'm from Greenville, South Carolina. I'm a double bio and psychology double major. And one word that comes to mind when I think of community service is necessary.
Thank you all for those introductions and those awesome words. We'll jump into our first question. As Dean Taifa alluded to in her opening remarks, the connection between community service and engagement and the life and legacy of Dr. King are inextricably intertwined. Dr. King once said, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter." How have you remained outspoken and kept that same energy about the things that matter to you through the community service and engagement opportunities you engage in as Bonners? Brianna?
Okay, so what matters to me is providing people with healthcare because I believe that a right to health. Healthcare is a right. It's a human right. And so I stay outspoken by sharing with others in the Spartanburg community about the work of organizations like St. Luke's that provide healthcare for people who may not be able to afford it. I'm also on campus involved in an organization called Amnesty International. We fight for human rights, whether it be healthcare, whether it be criminal justice type things. And then I keep the same energy by just showing up and staying committed to my site and staying committed to my works.
I think I'm next. Yes, for me, keeping the same energy is about self-reflection and deciding how you want to serve and what best is going to motivate you and what injustice you're most passionate about. For me, it was finding something that connected me with my passion and service together. And this summer, I participated in some research with Dr. Deidre Coleman, and it was about finding that livable wage in Spartanburg County. And we started doing research and looking at some data and trying to crunch those numbers. Unfortunately, because of COVID, it was cut a little bit short. But overall, I think it's just about finding that thing that's going to motivate you and drive you to give to the nonprofit and give and just want to bring justice to that nonprofit and that problem and injustice that you're passionate about serving.
To me, community service is a duty of all members of society. As Americans in this country, to point out things, it's our duty to point out things in society that we view as wrong. That's the only way we can continue to progress and build a better future for ourselves and for our future generations. Think of society like a science. We have to keep questioning what we think may be wrong in order to develop something better, something that works. For me personally, like Brianna said, healthcare is an issue that I think is vital because that relates back to my service and volunteering also at St. Luke's Free Medical Clinic, because I think the work that they do is very vital because they serve people who make below the poverty line and who don't have access to proper health care. And the fact of the matter is that there's many Americans that choose to put some of their medical concerns aside because they're worried about the bill that's going to come at the end of the month, and not being able to pay back hospital bills and all that kind of stuff. And as we consider America one of the most progressive countries in the world, it's kind of sad to see that that's the case. And out of the 23, I think the statistic was, out of the 23 most developed countries in the world, the United States is the only one yet to establish universal healthcare. So that's kind of an issue I'm sort of passionate about. And it's these kind of things that we need to address to keep progressing as a society and building a better future for ourselves and all these generations to come. So the fact that Dr. King came up with that realization even over half a century ago is really phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, so what's been touched on so far with the previous answers, I think, captures what makes me so outspoken is that uh, we know how important our work is to our sites, and that it is impactful. And so when you know that, you have to keep pushing and keep calling out things that aren't right. I know for me, it goes beyond just being that loud voice in the room at times. Most of the time, it happens in one-on-ones, in these small settings where you can highlight what you're doing and why it's important. And so, yeah, just knowing why your sites are doing what they're doing keeps us going and makes us want to work harder and speak on what we're saying, excuse me, at our sites and why it's important going forward.
Yeah, just to echo what everybody else has said, I think a big part of serving your community is just making sure that everyone is treated fairly. And I think we can all agree on that. And so through the work I've done, I find myself identifying gaps and trying to address them, with the purpose of trying to build better structures or trying to develop better policies that fit everyone. And so, this work isn't done by itself. We have to be curious. We have to explore the way things work. And a big important factor, I think, is to really reason and critically think about the situations that we come across. Because if we don't really critically think about the things that we are doing or the things that we should do, things could really go wrong. And so by doing all of these things, we can develop better strategies and ideas to create really a positive and meaningful change in our communities. And that's what we're really trying to do when it comes to community service.
Thank you. Based on your responses, it seems as though community service, engagement, and building, in addition to demonstrating what matters to you, also extends to broader involved issues of inequity and social injustice that permeate society. How has engaging in the Spartanburg and larger South Carolina community contributed to positively impacting humanity? Sammy, we'll start with you on this one.
For this question, I feel like the work we all do at St. Luke's, my Bonner site collectively, as volunteers or otherwise, it's clear how it benefits humanity, especially people in the Spartanburg community area. I actually searched this up on Google. If you just look up St. Luke's website and you go down a little bit, and I have it right here just to make sure I got the right numbers. It says that 16%, which is around 27,637 people in Spartanburg, are currently medically uninsured. In 2019 alone, St. Luke's has served over 1,700 patients through 8,712 medical visits. So obviously these are crazy numbers. And being in that kind of atmosphere is honestly kind of very enlightening, because it's short, for me personally, it shines a light on the sort of privilege that we have just being Wofford students. Because some of the patients that come to St. Luke's, from what I've seen, for example, they have to schedule an appointment based on when they can get like transportation, either public transportation or them being dependent on a relative and seeing if when their schedule frees up because they need that relative to drive them to the clinic because they don't even have transportation of their own. Sometimes you see people that have just lost their jobs, and it's kind of heartbreaking to see because the system kind of failed them. So being a part of that community at St. Luke's that helps mitigate the effects of such aspects of American life is obvious. It obviously benefits humanity in a very marvelous way. Honestly, your efforts would never go to waste when you're working to benefit your community. even if something seems like a minuscule contribution, it can go a long way in terms of like local, regional, or national levels of change and progress.
I think that the way that we can engaging in Spartanburg's community has positively impacted humanity is just showing up. And I think that going back to the word I said about service is connection, I just think people need people and people need the connection. And I think that engaging with the community just helps bring joy and relief to not only the people that you're serving, but also the people that are working for the nonprofit that you're volunteering for. I think that it just shows them that there's someone who cares and wants to help and wants to be there for them and wants to talk. Previously, I worked at the Spartanburg Housing Authority, and I created programs. I worked with the elderly and disabled residents there, and I created programs for them and got them engaged and involved. And we had a little ladies book club, and they just loved showing up and sharing stories and just feeling like they were a part of something different from their everyday routine. So I really just think it's about getting that connection going and just making someone's day better and bringing a little bit of joy and relief to their life.
I think collectively what we all do is a lot of good work. To me, it seems like we're trying to change the world by starting with our own community here in Spartanburg. And so I want to include that, even though we talk about community service, part of serving your community can also be doing your own thing, whether it be educating others, doing some research to gather more data, doing some groundwork, etc. Um, and so I just want to include that engaging with, all this type of work gives people inspiration. It's hard to measure success because oftentimes in the world we live in, we find ourselves placing a monetary value to things that we do or just things in general. But when it comes to community service, there's it's really hard to put a monetary value on that. And oftentimes it's hard to measure success in this similar way because we're trying to really analyze everything at a community level. And so, by doing community service, you inspire people who are engaging with the community. At the same time, you inspire those who you serve. And that in return can create a cycle that can extend even further and create even more community service. Um, so I think, yeah, so the impact that just engaging with community has is inspiration.
Yeah, I would agree with what's been said thus far. I would add too as well. As Bonners, we're in the unique spot to give these nonprofits an extra hand with their work, because oftentimes they are overloaded, and so we step in and help them to reduce in a way that pressure, thereby giving them more time to deal with the more urgent matters. So that's one way. And then two, as Bonners and just being in this work, you learn more about the community, and in that learning, what works, what doesn't work, where things are, and you can see how you can uh, connect things, how to improve things, and just grow as a community. And so I think by serving, you're one, helping out those places that need the help, and then two, you're getting knowledge that will uh, extend well beyond your time serving. And so those two ways to me are the biggest ways that we've helped out.
And I totally agree with what everyone else said. One thing that I'll add also is that, we're all helping to close some kind of gap, whether it be health disparities or any other problem within our communities. And so I think it's very important that we, stay open, that our work is engaged, and that we do go out and try to make a change, even if it is small. But one thing I will say also is that the process of community service is not just about helping other people. it's also about you growing as a human being and as a person. So you will get a lot out of being able to serve your community. You'll be able to meet great people, make connections with other people, and really progress as a student and beyond Wofford.
Thank you, guys. So question number 3. Dr. King once said, people fail to get along because they fear each other. And they fear each other because they do not know each other. And they do not know each other because they have not communicated with each other. In thinking about the impact you have all made on humanity as Bonners, you all understand the importance of recognizing the privileges you hold and how they might show up to potentially harm the community you're serving. And understanding the impact that each of tonight's attendees can make on the community through serving on MLK Day and beyond, and to ensure we can all be of service to communities in need. What advice do you have for tonight's attendees in advance of serving on MLK Day? Tyrus, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, this is a great question. I would just say before Monday, I would research where you're going, and and then I would understand how that place is interconnected to other places as well. Because to me, uh, it seems like when you go and serve, it's seen as though this is this one place. Yeah, they have this cause and this is their work. When really these places all are in the same work, honestly. They just have different means of doing it. And so I would say research how this place is connected to to other places as well. And then from there, you'll have a more broad um, understanding of what you're doing and how what you're doing is impactful.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo what Tyra said. I mean, I think it's very important to educate yourself. I think it's very important to do your research. And just, with the events coming up, there's a lot that can be done, and there's a lot that needs to be done. And you know, human progress itself isn't automatic. It's not gonna get done by itself. And so we need to step up and really think about what we're gonna do, how we're gonna do it, and who it's gonna impact. I think all of these things are interrelated, and at times we find that one specific problem is indirectly or even directly related to another one. And so we find ourselves that by doing one sort of service, we are unintentionally giving others the power to do other types of services. And even with our own service, we inspire others to continue their own.
I think my advice would be not to get discouraged. Keeping it real with you guys. Sometimes it's not always super easy to be engaged. Sometimes you plan a program for people and they don't show up, or it takes a while to find a site or communicate with people, and that's okay. You just gotta find your groove and what you're passionate about, as we've been saying. And it can also be really easy to just go through the motions and be like, oh, I have to get a Bonner hour, or oh, community service. But if you're intentional with your time, and going back to Bree and Hector's point about self-growth and inspiration, I think being intentional, you might just end up meeting someone who will inspire you right back to just keep giving and keep going. And I think that's my biggest advice.
Yeah, and just to echo Savannah, she kind of took my point there, but yeah, resilience is very important because like she said, it might not always be easy. People might not always show up. And I would also say to walk into your service with humbleness, understand what you're doing, understand why you're doing it, but also know that you will have to learn certain things. You know what I'm saying? You're at Wofford, of course, and you're very smart, but out there, engaging with other people and being a part of the community, you have to be open to learning so much more than what you learn in the classroom. So I would say, be resilient, of course, and then be open to making those connections and learning.
I would echo basically what everyone else has said about not to be discouraged and keep going and try to maintain that type of consistency. But I think another thing, I'm not sure if anyone's already said it or not, but another thing is find something you're genuinely passionate about. Because if you're going to go out there and volunteer and try to have an impact on your community, you want your heart to be in it. You don't want to feel like you're forced to do it. You want to feel like you want to do it because you're passionate about it, because you want to see change. So you try to find that one thing that does it for you, that you want to see progress in, or I hope that makes sense.
That made perfect sense, Sammy, and all of you guys did as well. Thank you so much to our esteemed panelists for their responses. At this time, I will share my screen to demonstrate how you can sign up for volunteer opportunities throughout the year, but especially on MLK Day. All right, can you all see the screen? Are we good to go? All right, so obviously my screen looks a little bit different from you guys as students, but if you scroll down on your home page, you'll find the Campus Connect tab. You'll click on that tab. You're automatically signed up, so you don't have to worry about signing in or anything like that. It'll pull up to your dashboard page, and if you've volunteered before, then hopefully this will be filled out. But if you go down, you'll find the MLK Day 2021 tab. And it will send you right over to United Way of the Piedmonts page. And as soon as you scroll down, there are a number of different opportunities for you to get involved in. Some of them start a little bit earlier, some of them start on the day, some of them run throughout the week. So if you find something that interests you, all you need to do is just click on it, view details. It'll give you the time, what organization, what's needed in order to serve. And then from there, you can click respond. For United Way, you will have to make an account for them. But those are the steps that you need to take in order to serve on MLK Day. And I'll stop sharing my screen now. Do you guys have any questions or comments or concerns about those things? And if so, I think we're going into our next portion of Q&A, so I'll let you ask in the chat. And I will pass the mic to Dean Taifa.
Thanks, Toria, for that demonstration. And thank you to our esteemed panelists. So at this point, we will take a few questions from the audience. And so we have a few questions here. The first is, what can we as part of the Wofford community do to maintain the same energy of service at Wofford that Dr. King is known for? And so this question is for our panelists. I'm gonna call on someone. Bree.
I would just,
You can go ahead, Tyra.
I would just say, first off, I think it's important to leave Wofford more to know what's in the community, because what I've seen over the 4 years I've been here is that there is a lack of knowledge as to what's there and what can be done. And so, and this has been said during this, the past half hour, but the first step has to be knowing what's there. And from there, you can make a plan to go out and serve. But I would just say first, know what's out there, and then from there, go and serve.
I'll go next. I would say don't be afraid to ask other people about what is out there. Just piggybacking off what Tyra said. There is some misconceptions a little bit about the Spartanburg community in general. And so I think it would be best to ask because I live in Spartanburg. As somebody who's from Spartanburg, as an upperclassman who has been in Spartanburg for a while, as someone in Bonner who engages with the community. So kind of putting yourself out there and trying to make those connections in order to be able to volunteer is a first start as well.
I'll go next. You really have to think about Spartanburg and Wofford as being part of the same community, because they are. And Wofford has done some things that you might want to research about. I would say that you should, if you want to be more involved in this, pick an area, any area that you're passionate about, literally anything. It can be education, for example, and start learning about educational outcomes in Spartanburg or any sort of educational related things here in Spartanburg. And I'll give you an example. The Spartanburg academic movement has done research on kindergarten readiness results in kids here in Spartanburg in schools. And a lot of research has been done in that area. A lot of discussions are currently being done in that area. And so, there's a lot of things that you can do. And if there's, something you come across, maybe a project, research, and you're interested and want to be involved, contact them. Don't be afraid to really, reach out, because the project and the work never really ends. It always keeps going. Even after a research project ends or even after a structure is developed, there's always a next step to that. It's always a continuation.
Thank you all so much. And so during the session, you all talked a lot about what you are gaining from your experiences. And this particular audience member wants to let you know that they loved hearing that, loved hearing about your inspiration, the knowledge, the fulfillment, and this sense of meaning and purpose. But anyone of our panelists talk more about any personal story of a particular experience while volunteering that illustrated what you gained, whether that was the inspiration or the knowledge or the fulfillment or the sense of meaning or purpose. And so since Savannah and Sammy didn't answer this previous question, we can start with either one of you.
I think I got this one. One time there was this guy that used to come to St. Luke's, and he's been going there for about 2 years or something, way before I started volunteering there. And one day his treatments were successful, and he came back to the clinic and came up to us, and he called the nurse down and everything. And personally, he was trying to thank everyone for all their efforts and stuff, and he sort of started tearing up. And it was at that point I was like, this is the work that we do. Even though technically, since obviously I don't have a medical degree, so most of the stuff I do is dealing with charts and all that kind of stuff, but everything you do helps play into this system. And this system is doing amazing things like that. Like, this guy thought that there's no way he was going to get better. And then after 2 years of treatment, he was completely cured. And he came back to St. Luke's. And it's just seeing that sort of accomplishment in front of your face, it really instills that passion to, like, inside of you. You want to do more. And so it becomes sort of intrinsic. It becomes sort of self-motivated. And that's the kind of thing that I think everyone should get out of their community service.
Yeah, I can also answer that one. One of the activities that I did with the Spartanburg Housing Authority was going and grocery shopping with the residents there, and we would all like get on a bus and go to Walmart, and it was just a good time. But on the way there, I sat beside a gentleman, and he was telling me how his family doesn't really have much to do with him, and how he doesn't really like a lot of the people there. And so he just really was genuine and honest, and we just had a great conversation, and I was just able to sit and talk with him, which he just appreciated. And then once we got to Walmart, I was able to help them like put the groceries in their cart and push their buggy around and chat with them and just make them feel good and bring them up about things that were going on. because sometimes they would have like all of these outstanding bills or something like that, and they were just really down on themselves. But just bringing that little sense of joy and communication, and just any way that you can help, just by like putting some, you know, bread in their buggy and pushing it around for them, like that's what they appreciated. And that's just one of my stories that I had. So
I can jump in. So Bonner does this thing called Summer of Service, where one summer we commit to um, helping out an organization. And during my first summer of service, I chose St. Luke's Free Medical Clinic, and that's still my site to this day. But anyways, I everyone starts off in the chart room, and it's a funny story we like to tell everyone because we just have to put charts in alphabetic order. But you know, as you are there, your skills show out, and you start getting moved to places. And I remember my first day, I walk in and, you know, I get a tour of the chart room and, you know, straight to alphabetizing charts. And at that particular point in time, they had just recently lost the only staff member that spoke Spanish. And they have a huge Latinx community that only speaks Spanish at times. And so upon them finding out that I can speak Spanish, they allowed me and trained me to make appointments for the Latinx community. And so what I quickly found out was that they would let a volunteer that speaks Spanish come once a week and do all the appointments for these patients. And at times, you know, when the volunteer would come in, they would have like 48 calls, um, like 48 messages, and everybody needing different things. And so, with me being there every day, I really brought that number down and I was able to make an impact that way. And so, that really helped me out because not only did my Spanish come in handy, but also some of my biological background and, you know, being able to understand terms and translate them into Spanish and maintaining that professionalism and sort of medical accuracy there. And so, you know, that's just one story that I can share.
Thank you all for sharing. This second question is more in relationship to what you were just talking about, Hector, and thinking about skills and specifically the education that you all have received at Wofford. And do you think that there are any, or do you have any specific examples of how your education at Wofford has helped you be able to really be of service to the community and really be able to engage in a way that is impactful and has been impactful? And so maybe Bree, we can start with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dean Taifa. So I am, like I said in the beginning, I'm a bio major. And so I also volunteer at St. Luke's Free Medical Clinic. And a lot of the things that we do, like Hector said to begin with, is stuffing charts and making sure that the charts are ready and prepared for doctors. And so I remember one particular time we were putting labs into the computer, and I saw that something on the lab didn't look right because I had taken a physiology class last semester. And so I was asking questions and doing certain things just as a learning experience. And it turned out that something was off, and we actually got it under control, and we actually understood in order to help the patient and get the patient what they needed. So that's how my education thus far has impacted my work at St. Luke's.
I would say for me, you know, being a gov major, we read a lot, and you're taught to read critically. And so um, my side is legal services, and it's a nonprofit law firm downtown. But that entails a lot of case reading. And so, you know, we're talking maybe I go in twice a week now, but that's maybe 10 cases each time that I'm going through and trying to find things in. And so that skill of reading critically and knowing how to form things and just look for things that way has been a huge help at my side over the years.
Yeah, I can speak to this question as well. Going back to this summer, I engaged in some research with a faculty member at Wofford and used statistics skills and programming skills in order to sift through this data and try and find a livable wage for the Spartanburg community, and partnered with United Way as well. And so not only did I use the skills that I already had, but I actually didn't know the programming language. I know some because of computer science major, but I didn't know the specific one we were working in because it was more statistical, excuse me. And I actually learned more about subjects that I learned about at Wofford by engaging with the community. And if you are passionate about what you're learning about and what you're majoring about and want to serve, a great way to do that is to talk to professors or just do some research and find, things that connect, like for me, math and service, or for Tyrus, government and service. And I think that it's really important to engage in something that's connecting you right now with your education and service too, because I think that we're majoring in it. So hopefully we're passionate about it, and it's going to help you be more engaged in service and further your academics as well. So.
Savannah, I have a follow-up question for you. It seems as though your experience might be a little bit different from other panelists, at least in the sense of you doing conducting supervised research, right, with a professor on campus. Can you talk about how you came to be able to do supervised research through meeting with Dr. Coleman, and what tips you might have for students who want to do collaborative community-based research?
Yes, ma'am. For me, I talk about Bonner. I'm proud of it, and I and my professors hear it. And one of my professors actually talked to Dr. Coleman about me participating in research because she does summer research a lot. And then she approached me and didn't really have an idea of what we wanted to do yet. And so I was like, well, I have this thing called Summer of Service with Bonner, and I would really love to connect math and a nonprofit here in Spartanburg. And so I said, do you mind if we go see Toria? And we went and talked to Toria, and we presented her with this idea, and she was like, yeah, and I think that this and this would be a great way to go about it. So it's just about putting yourself out there and asking for the connection, and then showing what you're interested in and showing what you're passionate about, and then just working and trying to create those I know I keep saying connections a lot, but connections and kind of paving your own way through that and just being dedicated to the project.
Thank you. And we have one final question, and I'd like for each of our panelists to weigh in on this question. And so each of you, in talking about your service sites and the opportunities you've been able to engage in with the community, you all light up when you talk about it, right? And it's clear that you're passionate about the work that you do in the community, especially as it relates to your education. And so for some folks, it might be harder to figure out, like Hector mentioned, like what is the area of change, or what change do I want to make, and how do I connect that to something that I'm passionate about, right? Because there might be multiple organizations and sites around Spartanburg in South Carolina and the country, even right now that we're in a virtual space, that serve some sort of passion that I might have. So what advice would you all have for someone who is interested in lots and lots of different sites and wants to make change, but is having some difficulty figuring out how to choose? We can start with Sammy.
I mean, obviously the first step is doing your research, but if you're stuck between a bunch of different sites, there's nothing wrong with just going out there and feeling your way through and seeing how you like the work there. Uh, that's my opinion. Yeah. I'm not really sure what else to say.
I know I just finished talking a lot, but I can go. And Tori knows this especially. I've had a really hard time finding a site that I love. I know that we seem like all like professional talking about it because I do love the places that I've been, but sometimes, like I said, it's hard to, stay connected. Sometimes maybe the site doesn't need you for that anymore and they stop responding or something like that. We actually have this thing called first year exploration. So we've all been there. And your freshman fall is when you go in and you go and you say, okay, I'm passionate about education. Let me try Carver Middle School, or let me try the Boys and Girls Club. And you can try all these different things. So I think it's really about nailing down that thing that you want to serve, that social injustice that you want to work towards helping, and then saying, okay, like Sammy said, researching and saying, okay, this organization helps, and this organization helps, and going and getting out there and just trying it and seeing which one you like best.
I'm gonna jump in here. I think one of the biggest things you can do um, is collaborative research, because that just gives you the opportunity to do whatever it is you have the idea. And like, if even if you're not decided on a specific topic that you want, if we really think about it, all things are interrelated. And even as people, we all have intersectional identities that each relate to each other in some sort of aspect. And so, a specific example for me, I really like the healthcare field. I'm a bio major, but I also really enjoy philosophy and I enjoy all these social problems. And at times, like philosophy and biology are really hard to, or don't get along very easily nowadays. Um, and so, through research, um, some professors, some colleagues, and I, we developed this plan to Socratically interview participants here in Spartanburg about their time out of school and how that that time out of school impacts their education. And at the same time, we were finding out that there was a lot of social determinants of health that were related to reading scores. And so, now we had a chance to analyze both in the healthcare area, and we did that, and we got there by, doing philosophy. So it was really interesting and it's really cool. And, some of this research is still ongoing. So if you can't find a site or an opportunity, create your own.
Yeah, just going off that, so I would say first, if you can, try and find one place that brings together as much of your passions as it can, and go there. If you cannot, I'm just going off of what was just said by Hector. I would possibly look into seeing how you can bring those things together on your own, and then maybe pitch that to those places, and kind of show them why it is beneficial for them to all work together closely or closer, and that could be your service, by bringing together all of those different passions, and so it's even if you can't find that one, there are things that can be done to try and address as many as possible. And so I would just say that, in your pursuit of trying to serve the community.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of what everyone else said, do your research, make up your own if what you want to do is not being offered at the moment, and then understand that, you can have more than one site. Of course, don't spread yourself thin or do anything like that, but if you're passionate about some things that might not be as easily connected, you can have more than one site. So for instance, for me, I'm very passionate about the brain, but I also like to work with kids, and I also like to work in the medical field type thing. So what I'm working on now is helping kids learn about the brain, and we're making like Play-Doh type stuff, and it's a really great experience because you make an impact in the lives of the future generations who are going to be presidents and teachers and things like that. So, like everyone else said, being able to make those connections, having more than one side if you can handle that, and introducing your own, being your own leader in that sense is important as well.
Thank you all so much. And thank you to our audience for submitting those questions. Before we move ahead and begin to close, I just wanted to elaborate on signing up for service events and opportunities during MLK week here in Spartanburg. So there was a question that was submitted asking if it would be appropriate to share the link for volunteer opportunities to non-Wofford students. And so the United Way of the Piedmont, it is the site that links through Campus Connect for folks of the Spartanburg community or the community in general to be able to sign up for service opportunities and to engage in the community in an intentional way. And so you do not have to be a member of the Wofford community in order to sign up. Anyone who is a part of the Spartanburg community or the South Carolina community can sign up, and it's as easy as a Google. So United Way of the Piedmont. And so as we close today's session, I want to take the time to uplift my colleagues on the Wofford College 2021 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Committee for their efforts in this year's celebration. And those folks are Ian Brown, Dr. Begonia Caballero, Bree Dugan, Park Faison, Angela Filler, Isaiah Franco, Dr. Boyce Lawton, Marshall McDill, De'Aaron McGowan, Sarah Milani, Olivia Miller, Kia Kaiser, Tytasia Robinson, Lee Smith, Dr. Tasha Smith-Tyus, Jesselyn Story, James Stukes, and Toria Teemer. So this officially concludes our first 2021 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. virtual celebration event. Honor Scholars keeping the same energy. Next week, there will be a series of events that delve deeper into this year's theme. And on Monday, January 18th at 1 p.m., our keynote address will be delivered by Dr. Shayla Nunnally, who's the professor of political science and chair of the Africana Studies Department at University of Tennessee, Knoxville. So in amplifying the racial justice movement of 2020 and on the heels of the election of a new president, Dr. Nunnally will highlight Dr. King's belief in the ability of American political institutions' authority to facilitate democracy and racial equity while analyzing the possibility of that belief under this new Biden-Harris administration. So please use the following link to register. And I want to again thank you all for attending, and especially thank our esteemed panelists for their insight and wisdom that they have shared with us this evening. And I look forward to seeing you all at the events next week.